Ukraine could strike Crimea in the coming months. The US shutdown is costing $15 billion a week, and France has seized a Russian shutdown fleet tanker suspected of involvement with drones over Denmark. Here are the top international stories. Ukraine could launch a surprise strike on Crimea even before winter, and one of the likely targets could be the Crimean bridge. That's according to military analyst Michael Clark speaking during his weekly Q&A session on Sky News. He explained that Washington is now considering whether to provide Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles. These weapons can reach deep into Russian territory. They're extremely hard to shut down because they're precise and can fly low, skimming just above the ground to avoid detection. The analyst also reminded that Ukraine's forces have already targeted radar stations and air defense sites, including in Crimea. By creating gaps in Russian defenses, Ukraine could then strike even more critical targets. Clark suggested that any future operation might be on a much larger scale, involving airstrikes or even military landing from the sea in Crimea, and he did not rule out another attack on the Kerch Bridge. For now, there are no official statements about such preparations, Sky News adds. U.S. Special Envoy Kit Kellogg underlined the importance of the Tomahawk system. He called it a very advanced missile and said that if Ukraine is allowed to use it, it could change the dynamic of any military conflict by adding another layer of uncertainty thanks to its capabilities. Meanwhile, Russia insists that supplying Tomahawks to Ukraine would not change the situation on the battlefield. That's according to Russia's envoy to the United Nations, Vasyl Nebenzia. He added that Moscow would find a way to respond. No final decision has been made in Washington yet. According to the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. is considering supplying Ukraine with Tomahawk and Barracuda cruise missiles. And if Ukraine does get these weapons, the potential reaches vast, putting all European Russia at risk from St. Petersburg to the Ural Mountains. That's according to Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Defense Strategy at Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council.
Oil refineries, gas hubs, power plants. If Russia strikes Ukrainian ones, the symmetrical response is obvious, and transport hubs will become even more vulnerable. For the Russian economy, this means a loss of export revenues that cannot be quickly compensated for, a long-term crisis and weakening of its position in global markets, and internal destabilization from pressure from elites who will lose their profits to the population, which will face energy shortages.
U.S. to share intelligence with Ukraine for strikes deep inside Russia. The Wall Street Journal reports that U.S. will provide Ukraine with intelligence to carry out long-range missile strikes deep inside Russia, including targeting Russia's energy infrastructure. According to the U.S. officials cited by the newspaper, President Donald Trump recently authorized intelligence agencies and the Pentagon to help Kyiv to hit targets on Russian soil. American officials have also urged NATO allies to offer similar support. This step and an expansion of intelligence sharing is being seen as a clear sign that the Trump administration is deepening its support for Ukraine, even as efforts to push forward peace talks have stalled. For the first time, officials say the U.S. will help Ukraine plan strikes on energy facilities located far from the front lines, refineries, pipelines, power plants, and other infrastructure. That access to U.S. intelligence would make Ukraine far more capable of striking those high-valuable targets with the aim of cutting off revenue and fuel that Moscow relies on to sustain the war. A long-running government shutdown could be costing the U.S. as much as $15 billion every single week, reports Politico. Top economic advisors to President Donald Trump are warning that a prolonged federal shutdown could hit the economy hard. In a memo prepared for the White House, they point out that a country could lose roughly $15 billion in economic growth each week, the shutdown drags on. And if the crisis lasts a full month, unemployment could climb by at least 43,000 people. This calculation does not include the 1.9 million federal employees who are either on unpaid leave or working without pay. About 80% of them live in the Washington, D.C. area. According to Politico, the Trump administration plans to use the memo in internal communications with Republicans to shape a unified stance. The White House is trying to shift the blame for the shutdown onto Democrats, who Trump says are blocking the budget overfunding for Obamacare health insurance subsidies.
The real economic consequences of a prolonged government shutdown fall entirely on the shoulders of Democratic senators who are holding the economy and the country hostage by demanding free health care for undocumented immigrants.
The U.S. government shutdown began on October 1st after Republicans and Democrats failed to reach an agreement on budget spending. As a result, hundreds of thousands of federal employees have been sent home without pay, some social programs have been frozen, and several government agencies have come to a standstill. France has seized a Russian tanker from the country's shadow fleet, suspected of being involved in recent drone flights over Denmark. On Wednesday, October 1st, French authorities announced the capture of the vessel off the coast of Saint-Nazaire. The ship, known as Pushpa or Boracay, is under investigation as officials search for evidence linking it to the drone operation. According to news agency Agence France Presse, Brest prosecutor Stefan Kellenberger said the ship's captain and chief officer have been arrested. French authorities are investigating the vessel for lack of confirmed nationality or flag and failure to comply with authorities, offenses that could carry up to 1 year in prison and a €150,000 fine. The crew of Boracay refused to provide documents proving the ship's registration, prompting intervention by the French Maritime Gendarmerie. Officially sailing under Benin flag, the 144-meter tanker, built in 2007, has been behaving unpredictably. Its tracking system was switched off when French forces intervened. The ship is suspected to be part of Russia's shallow fleet, which helps Moscow export crude oil despite sanctions. On September 22nd, when drones disturbed air traffic in Denmark, the Boracay was near the Danish coast. Danish police are investigating whether it served as a drone launch platform, while French authorities want to know why it entered French waters. Investigators on board are searching for any evidence that could show whether the tanker also served as a hybrid projection platform. French President Emmanuel Macron has praised the action of French and European intelligence services in seizing the Shadow Fleet tanker. He stressed that targeting such vessels is a key part of European Union's sanctions strategy.
It is not me to establish this link, and I will remain very careful. But I think our Navy made its job, and it was a very important operation. Now it's under the control of our justice. And this is the best evidence of the fact that in the Baltic Sea, in the North Sea, in the Atlantic Ocean, in Mediterranean Sea, you have a lot of vessels precisely being part of this shadow fleet. Our assessment is that something between 600 and 1,000 boats are part of these shadow fleets, and they do contribute to the financing of the Russian economy and the Russian war effort, probably at least for a third of this war effort.
For the first time since the beginning of the full-scale war in Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin may meet Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in India. According to New Delhi television, Putin is expected to visit India on December 5th and 6th. The visit was first fledged back in August during a trip to Moscow by India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, though the exact dates were not set at that time. Journalists say the announcements comes aimed at rising tensions between New Delhi and Washington over India's trade ties with Russia. On September 1st, Modi told Putin that India and Russia stand side by side even in difficult times, while also urging a swift end to the war. At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in China, Putin called Modi a dear friend. At the same time, tensions with Washington were rising. On August 27, the US imposed 50% tariffs on Indian goods, the highest in Asia, in response to India's purchase of Russian oil, a move announced by President Donald Trump. That's it for now. If you like this video, please subscribe and leave your comments.